Hello, and welcome to our bi-weekly, I was going to say bi-weekly annual, but that doesn't make any sense. Our bi-weekly dev stream. My name is Matt, this is HP, and this is Mark. Hello, hi. We've got some exciting stuff today-ish, but it is going to be a little bit shorter today because we're extremely busy. And we want to make sure that the next update is super good, and so we're going to, what's the word, expedite the process a little bit more today.
Do some, skip a couple of steps.
So yeah, the first thing we're going to skip, we're not going to do the community highlights today. We're not going to do community suggestions as well. We're going to go straight into what's coming up with the game very soon, talk a little bit more about One World. And then we're going to go to the QA. We have a lot of work to do, and I know that you guys are excited for us to finish it, so you guys can have a hand in it. So,
absolutely. So yeah, I guess we're just, for once, we're just going to jump directly into talking about what we're working on. And I think this has been, there's been a couple of interesting things. This is the longest, even if you don't include the holiday weeks, right, where the office was closed, this has been the longest period of time since the history of Foxhole being a thing out there that we haven't released an update, because we went from doing updates every week to updates every 2 weeks to updates every 3 weeks, and this time it's been I haven't counted, but it's definitely been longer than 4 or 5 weeks, right?
Yeah, we are aware of that.
And there's a reason, because World Conquest is, we can't just, it's not your average update, right? It's a huge undertaking, and we actually started lots of it last year, lots of bits and pieces where we already started, in fact, like last year, and this year is more like we're going full throttle on it. We're taking what we did, and we're hopefully going to have I'd say a piece of the pie that you can try soon. But
a piece of the pie.
My brain's fried, so. That was the best I can come up with. But anyways, I think one thing that is kind of interesting to talk about before some of the World Conquest stuff is some of the smaller changes, actually, that are probably going to be lost in the cracks due to all the World Conquest stuff. But there's been some cool things, and maybe you can touch quickly upon things like the notification system and little touch-ups of the UI.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys are probably gonna notice I've been slowly chipping away into the UI, make sure that it's a little bit more sleek, a little bit more uniform, and things tie up together better among the whole UI. It's not fully finished yet or anything like that. Actually, I think there's gonna be another roundup before the game's release. I have the feeling that we're still gonna have a little bit of a roundup, changing the UI a little bit more, making it even better.
Yeah, I would call this more like just a minor refinement. I think it's like you're saying, the one we do later is more of like a revamp. This is just a bit of like a touch up, right?
Yeah, it didn't take a long time to do it, but it's just make a little bit better. We have the notification system that you can open and close, like it actually have functionality of stacking them up, so you don't lose notifications like, oh, you've been invited to a clan, to a squad. You don't lose that notification, things like that. So there are small touches that are coming, and they're coming for the whole game, not just for one. As we said, we never wanted to just focus on One World. We are devoting a lot of our energy there, but that doesn't mean that we are leaving the rest of the game behind.
One of the really big things that was added or announced in the last post, the dev blog, was the Garrison Barns.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Which also comes along with that is also going to be fisherman huts and other garrison buildings. So just different building types that you can actually garrison, which is like a step in a much longer process. But the general idea is so that it's not just sort of the same types of things that you're interacting with around the world, and that's to make it more interesting, make it more varied, make the locations more unique. These are things that you may notice kind of once and then not really think about, but it's little things that we're doing like that I think are gonna make the game feel more well-rounded.
Oh, and even on your part, you're probably gonna see a little bit more things scattered around the map that you haven't seen before, more props, more visual detail that was not there before.
As I find it's kind of funny because the entire team is constantly trying to make the game a better game, and people push these little improvements that are not necessarily always the thing that I'm personally trying to push as the highest priority stuff, but because people are always, if they have time, if they aren't working on something, they will just go and work on something to make something better, small, like these UI changes, like adding in like the barn and like the fisherman's house. That's these little changes, and that's a result of everyone on the team just like trying to make things better, right?
Sorry, is it true? I had a question today. Somebody, one of our players just DM'd me, and we're talking about a little bit, and then he ended up asking me like how the team is receiving like working on one world, and he was asking like how you guys feel about it, like the fact that basically the whole team now is like very focused on one like singular vision and one like just moving towards one objective, and that's actually very invigorating. I can feel it in the team.
Yeah.
I'm working a lot more with the other members of the team now for different reasons, and I can see that it's a lot more invigorating for them, to everybody to be like together moving towards this goal.
And I would say we also had to change slightly as a team too. We couldn't do things exactly the same way because the game is so much more complex, and we need like more people working on areas of the game that maybe previously weren't working on those areas of the game. And it's just been really good. Besides that, two small things I wanted to point out. These are kind of random things, but I think you guys think it's cool. One of them I talked about on the community stream last week, but sticky bombs are going to be throwable now, which is kind of cool because that was one of the most probably underutilized things in the game. And the other small thing, I'm quite certain of this, but I'm nervous now because I'm like, wait a minute, was there some extra like footnotes attached to it? But the APC issue of being able to shoot out of the APCs, we worked on that.
Should be fixed?
It should be fixed, yeah. So yeah, it's good. Don't worry. You can blame me if it's wrong, but I heard it was fixed. Let me say that, and
we trust our programmers.
I heard it was fixed. Someone
I was talking about it. I'm like, wait a minute.
Somewhere.
I thought there were some extra footnotes. But anyways, so I thought you guys would think that's cool because I know it's been really bothering some of you guys out there. Yeah.
Let's go to
Besides that, let's finally talk about some World Conquest stuff. One thing I want to say first is that I know we've been talking about, like, we've been saying, okay, there's gonna be one world, there's gonna be World Conquest. Just to be clear, the One World revamp has like a few parts, and World Conquest is one of those parts. When we talk about World Conquest, we're specifically talking about the mainland island and the war that's going to be happening there. And then, so there's three parts. There's World Conquest, there's the home regions, and then there's the skirmishes. So that's sort of the three things that will eventually, hopefully, work together in making the One World revamp work, right? Yes. And our current focus is going to be on the World Conquest, right? And on that blog last week, we talked about a whole bunch of low-level details on how that's going to work. So please read that blog post if you want to get up to speed. And then today we're going to talk about a few other features. The first one is going to be the world map view, right? So this is a really cool thing that we felt that was really important. That was missing from the original World Conquest, and that's the ability to see across the whole world, right? And specifically being able to go to the world map view, choose a neighboring region or some other region in the world, and being able to see the map in that region. So with that regard, in the old World Conquest, what people used to do, they used to leave the server, they used to leave the region, and then join the other one just to see what's going on, or have to rely on chat or something. But this way, you won't have to do that. You don't have to leave your region. You can just see the whole world, because we really see this as like a whole world, and the idea of like servers itself is just more of like a technical thing.
Should never actually
be
right? For us. It should never be part of the gameplay even to have to think about what is if there's a different server or not. And
absolutely. And I think that so before we had the world chat, which allows you to text chat into regions, and then now we're going to add this, and in the future we hope to add even more things to make World Conquest feel like a unified world, right? So it's going to be exciting once World Conquest is there and it's kind of stable. Like, there's just, the sky's the limit in terms of like, I mean, maybe that's a bit of a hyperbole, but there's just, I guess I'm excited about all the things we can build on top of that once it's stable. And making it stable is going to be the first like really scary thing. with a lot of risk. So
and it has been really, and it has been a very big challenge and a good challenge and a fun challenge, but
yeah, absolutely
a challenge.
Cool.
A couple things people are like kind of just asking about and like talking about that I just kind of wanted to mention about this map, that just real quick, like the home regions and stuff is still something we're figuring out.
Yep.
So what you're seeing on the left and right of the map is like a mock-up.
Yeah.
They're basically the lobby islands. I don't like. Again, this is early. Like we said, these are going to come in phases. Things are going to happen in phases. So
and also, there's a couple of other things that we're going to show in the stream that I would say is more a developer type of mock-up, and like because we didn't have time to spend on actual like front-facing type of visuals. So even some of the concept art was made not to be really seen by anyone else. But you know, we always try to show you guys as much of the process as we can, right? So that sort of kind of adds on top of what you were saying, Matt.
And people are noticing differences in Far North Coast, which is all
I noticed.
Say.
Oh, okay, interesting. Cool. So on to the next thing, which is the port bases. So there's going to be these special bases in the world that you can kind of think of them like the home bases of the World Conquest mainland, right? So sort of the fallback point, and the place that sort of is always for the most part, most of the time, is going to be fairly safe, right? And just a couple of things there about it, and so it's sort of when we talk about the port base, it's both a specific structure and it's also sort of like the surrounding area and the structures that are there, right? So there is going to be specific structure that's much like a town hall now, in the sense that it has a stockpile, it has a spawn point, and it's going to act like what you know as a hometown now in one or more of the coastal regions, and that is on your faction side, right? So the colonials on the west and the wardens on the east, and they're going to help us in a few ways. One is that they're going to help us solve like a couple of these strange corner cases that we had in the past, like if you've ever seen it, the like the resistance camp thing, which is really strange, but it was there to resolve this corner case of you can't build a CV next to a town hall, so then we need to like put that in there so that you can build a CV to actually rebuild your town hall. But it only shows up if it's your last town hall, so we can no longer have that, right? We can get rid of that one. Another weird thing is like with the manufacturing plant, you build it with scrap. There was another bug associated with that, but I won't get into it. But for the most part, you can build a manufacturing plant with scrap because you need it to get the building materials. But with the port base, something that we plan to do is to make sure that you can get a slow trickle in of materials, so that you won't ever get stuck in that type of corner case, right? And another thing is that one of the problems that we have right now is the wind condition is like highly coupled with sort of like where you're spawning, right? Like your hometown, and that creates this really bad situation that causes wars to then always end up in this really terrible state where like when you're down to your final town and you're trying to spawn out and you're trying to do things, but the very thing that you're coming from is the very thing that
it's being attacked and
it's being like attacked, right? And then it's like a discouragement to play, to try to fight back. So this is sort of a decoupling of those two things, so that the last stand is not going to really be occurring there at these port bases. It's going to be occurring at the final town that you're trying to claim. So in that sense, for those of you that have followed the FCL matches, there's a little bit of like a relationship there, in a sense. In the FCL matches, the win condition is not your hometown, and it's not. I know it's not exactly the same thing, but it does certainly like share a little bit of the feeling
concept,
there, right? That type of concept, which should be kind of cool. I think it'll be more motivating to fight until the end, right? And then these bases will have all the key production structures, so you'll always be able to have a fully functioning war machine, sort of like regardless of what phase you are in the war. And there's going to be more purposes for this port base that we're not going to really talk about right now yet, but I think when the home regions come and when we start thinking more about like how skirmish is going to be worked in, I think this is going to be an important place. So, and this will be in the first version of World Conquest, but we won't have the visuals yet for it. So it's just going to be like more, like it's going to look like something, but it's going to be more using like stand-in assets. So some of the concepting that we've done, we haven't been able to really achieve some of that yet, but once we have time, and moreover, once we put these port bases actually up to the test, then we can have a better sort of like feel on how to make the function match the visuals. The first version is going to be more rough and more like a feeling out process. So if there's problems with the port bases, just please let us know. And it's going to be like everything else in World Conquest. It's going to be a process before it's good, right? So, and just a couple of cool visuals. Again, a lot of the stuff was just meant for like the internal side. This is some of the concepting that we've done. The bottom left one we showed on the community stream last week, and here's some of the other concepts that we've been working on. And things are not going to look exactly like that even once they're done, even once we're past the stand-in asset phase. But this is sort of like the idea, right? But what we're trying to go for, right? So, and I guess like thematically, I could touch on that, but Matt, if do you have anything to say, or you think maybe we'll save that for the future? Which
I mean, a lot of it is like really like industrialized, like military base looking, not like a town. Because I think like there's this sort of mentality right now that like everything looks like a town.
Even when it's not a town,
even when it's not really supposed
hall.
to be a town. So like one of the things that we're leaning heavily into is like also having like military style theming. I think like even in the first version you're gonna see this, like these bases look nothing like a town. So like they're kind of similar to this, other than like the stuff that's on the water is really different because there isn't like a port base on the water. I'm making motions with my hands that nobody can see. But I think it'll be cool. I think it's cool. I think it's already cool, so I think it'll only get cooler as we add more stuff to it and make it like just kind of more interesting. I think like in general, like across the theming of like One World, I want things to be cooler, just like cooler in general, because whatever that means, I want it to have more style.
Well, I think like based on our conversation, every time we talked about that, one of our goals is to make things feel more like unique, right? And not so like repeated. And a lot of that is just a function of we haven't had the time yet to spend the resources on that, right? But I've talked about so much, the number 3 thing on our list, which doesn't mean we're going to be waiting until we work on it, is to go and go back and do like a revamp of the towns. But I think even before that happens, we're going to be slowly playing around with ideas, like playing around with different functionality we can add to certain structures that maybe even break a couple of the conventions that we've been using right now. It's kind of a feeling out process, right?
Stranger Days in the chat says like he wants to have, or they, I don't know, want to have shipping container fights. Well, I have some news for you. That you may get your wish. But that is the kind of thing like
feature reveal. You can fight in a container.
You can fight in shipping containers.
Cool. And so beyond that, just want to talk a little bit about the first version that we're going to be seeing. Is let's see how far this list goes. I don't even know. Okay. So we're working hard on bringing the first version of World Conquest, and it's going to be a work in progress, highly work in progress, like I've said 1,000 times, and it will contain at least the bottom 3 regions of the world. We'll see if there's more, but let's just 6 is a good safe number for now, and it's going to have a basic feature set. So basically the bare minimum that we think is even worthwhile having a World Conquest war in it, right? But there's a lot of stuff that is going to be missing. First of all, the port bases are going to be work in progress. a lot of the maps won't be redesigned for World Conquest, so we're sort of like retrofitting them in a bare minimum way to work in World Conquest. So certain mechanics that we want in World Conquest eventually, it might not pan out until we have a chance to actually go through and like redesign these layouts for specific goals we had in the World Conquest gameplay, right?
Like the first map you're gonna see completely overhauled is Far North Coast.
Yeah.
Probably followed closely by another map.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we talked about strategic structures in the world, like these specific structures you can claim for either side. So that's something that we have to cut because there's just way too many moving parts. But
For now.
Yeah, cut for now. As in, like, we're probably going to be rapidly trying to add at least some version of that very soon. It's cut, guys. In fact, World Conquest is cut. And then, yeah, just the catch-all, many more World Conquest features. And obviously, home region and skirmishes are not going to be a part of this. I talked about that already, right?
Yeah.
So, and like, you know, I'm not going to say release date, but I think I think it's not too far off, right? Like, I think within a few weeks type of time frame. You know, I think it's important that, like, I don't want to be, like, holding back a release date, but I also think that it's important that we tell you guys, like, what we're currently thinking. Even if we don't hit those dates, it's sort of like the more you get where we're coming from, then, the less problems are going to be in terms of, like, the expectations.
Yep.
And I really do feel like we are within, like, a few weeks away from this, maybe sooner, maybe later, but let's just say it's not too far off, right?
We're shooting for sooner, but who knows?
Yeah.
We want to get it in your hands as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But that's the key word, is as soon as possible.
Yeah. And we also know there's a lot of people waiting to play World Conquest, and a lot of people have sort of like taken a break from the current game to wait until World Conquest comes out. So we're very well aware of that, which is the other reason why we want to put this out there as soon as we can, right? So
someone's asking just to see the world map again. Do you want to just go back to that real quick?
Sure, yeah.
Just to...
Although with these, you're making me... There we go. Yeah.
There's your world map.
Yeah.
You got 5 seconds.
1, 2, 5.
5, alright.
Alright. And then it's Q&A. So,
alright, well, if you guys have any questions, I mean, there's been quite a bit of questions, so I'm just going to ask one that I see on screen currently.
Sure.
Oracle Gaming 123 asks, will the Barns be in the next version? Yes.
With the what?
The Barns.
Oh.
They're already in the game now, so...
and you can fight inside them.
Yeah, you can fight inside them. There's 2 different versions, and I think we have an old like fisherman's hut also that can be garrisoned that you can go inside. And then I think there's some other ones that have been worked on, but I don't want to confirm any of that. Cool stuff.
Well, you just confirmed that there's more, right?
There's more. So, you'll see new garrison buildings for sure, because I think they're also kind of integral to some of the stuff going on in Far North Coast. So I'm excited to see that stuff.
Cool.
Will Outhouse be made into garrison building? That's Clapfoot. That's a really good idea, and like it wouldn't be that difficult to implement. I think the question is whether or not we actually want to.
Garrison Outhouse?
We should have a conversation.
It's an idea.
Yeah.
It's a decent idea.
Maybe we should put like one of them in the world.
Closes the door.
Just one of them in the world? Yeah, you guys have to find it. It's on that island and on the shore.
No, they don't have to find it.
What island? I don't know what you're talking about.
There's no islands on the shore. USS Games, will we have the resources we had back in World Conquest 1 that was never put into use, like the Capitol building, like the garrison supplies and the Capitol building? The civic supplies, I think it was called, or something like that.
No, not for the first version at least. Who knows what could happen later, but for now, no.
This chat's moving really fast. Casso12 asks, is there any concept for the 9th map yet? We have some ideas. We're talking about it. We're working on it.
Is that the map right beside here?
What?
The 9th map.
No.
The one that they cannot see.
No, it's not. You're just... Anyway, it's behind HB. We're it's definitely like on a radar because we do want to complete the grid. So that's all I can say about that. You know, this is a decent question because it hasn't come up in a really long time, so I
Yeah.
feel like I want to ask it, and it's one that we use to go
It's
all the time.
planes.
Lag plays games us. Will there be any uniforms anytime soon?
Uniforms.
Since we brought it up a lot, we showed some stuff, and then we never talked about it, so I think it's worth.
Right.
Talking about.
So I don't think there's going to be anything planned soon. I think we sort of had a feeling out process with the radio backpacks on what it's going to be like to like change a visual on a character, but we did. I think for the next long while, the next month or two,
Let's put it that way.
At least it's not going to be a high priority.
The backpack was like a technical thing that we had to do
Yes.
to make sure that we could change meshes on the fly, differently than what we did with male and female characters, in which you could do it like beforehand.
Yeah.
So we did that, but with the World Conquest, like a lot of things actually took priority.
Yeah. I think it's worth kind of like reiterating this as much as I can. So you guys, it's not like a low level roadmap, but sort of what we're thinking about. Our top 3 priorities right now is obviously all the One World features, and then we're going to be working on the communications and squad tools / social tools. That's kind of number 2, and then number 3 is going to be the town revamp, right? So that's sort of the 3 things. It doesn't mean we're not going to have tasks on the side, because that always happens, right?
Like we do now, like.
It's going to be other, who knows? Maybe we'll throw in some vehicle or something. It's unlikely, but like, I just want to say I don't want to rule it out. But
I do think something like uniform system requires a lot of.
Something like uniform system it's not going to fall under that category. Yeah.
375 WCB12 asked, will there be any sort of single player experience, even just a practice mode or something? Foxhole was designed from the ground up to be a multiplayer experience. It is effectively an MMO. Everything runs on servers. That's not to say there may not be like some shooting range or something down the road, but I don't think we have any plans for that. And as of right now, you can kind of play by yourself and still do a lot, but I don't think we're like, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we're gonna ever really think about doing a single player mode.
What about the point and click adventure?
Yeah, that you just brought up like 30 minutes ago. There's been some really cool pixel art stuff coming in the community highlights, which I wish we could show, but unfortunately we're not doing community highlights. There will be community highlights post that.
It's going to be awesome. Don't miss the one that is coming this week.
I think it'd be cool to have like a Sierra style of like Foxhole.
It's just a fun joke that we have in the office that we think it'd be kind of cool to have a point and click adventure game. Mostly me.
AT Golden asks, mostly you. AT Golden asks, what do you guys want to do with the tech tree and how it works, and how much do you want to change up the current weapons and defenses to adapt them to One World? So there's a couple questions, but
I think this is an excellent question, because I really want you guys to understand our mindset, right? There's so many moving parts in World Conquest that our goal is to sort of make sure that the game is stable before we do any drastic changes. So in every aspect, from the tech tree to the map layouts for most of the maps that we have right now, to like the way most of the mechanics work, like vehicle production and everything, because there's already so many things changing that we have talked about, you guys know about, changing even more beyond that at this point is very scary, because we don't even, like, when this thing lands, there's a chance that a lot of things might fall apart. And if we go, and one of the conversations we had when we were working on the tech tree specifically was like, one of the requirements was like, this has to land, right? This has to land on its 2 feet. And if we do something crazy, which we have like a lot of ideas on what we want to do, because right now there are some of us that feel like maybe the tech tree is a little, it's a little safe, right? But it's a good reason why it's safe. It's so that it lands on its 2 feet, that we don't end up having like an imbalanced war. And one of the very important factors that went into the tech tree is to make sure that the early game is very stable, right? So that a war can start up, and it's going to function quite well, at least for like a while. And I'm pretty happy with the first version. Actually, I think it's going to work well. And I think once we've had that there for like a while, then I think we can figure out how to change both the content and the tech tree layout at the same time, because there were some very real concerns that changing both at the same time is going to be too much, and I fully agree with that, right? So
also it's worth noting, like, the tech tree is going to change over this process. So like, just expect that. Like what you see now is like, okay, this is what we think is going to be ideal. It's going to change because there's things that we can't see until it's live. And that's, I think, across all of one world, like, that's really important.
You know what's a quote that I really liked? Someone pointed this out from the Rust site. It's you know, like the blog for the game Rust,
Mm-hmm.
and they posted like a roadmap, and they're like, the only thing we can promise is that everything here is wrong. And like, okay, I don't agree with, like, I don't think I would go so far to say that, but I agree with the sentiment, right? You know, everything is up for change, making better, because Foxhole is a long-term journey for us. It's gonna be a long time.
I honestly believe that, like, we want to make a really good game, and the only way to do that is to just do it.
Yeah.
Like, and there's no other
Absolutely.
way. There was a question here that was really cool, and the Bionic 2000 asked, why the bottom 6? Will we need to wait more weeks for the map revamps? So the bottom 6 are because the 9th map is obviously not complete yet, so it's not balanced. I think, like, I've made arguments even today about not having it be perfectly balanced because it's still early, but I do think there's a lot of arguments to have it balanced. So having those 6 is like the first test, is also like a smaller sample size so that we can test things as well and propagate that into the new map and the map revamps and all that.
Yeah.
As far as the map revamps are concerned, like, they're going to come and it's going to take time because they require redesigns. Much like you guys are going to see, like, Far Not Coast has like some of its old self in it, but it's also a completely different map. So you guys are going to really see, like, why it's going to take some time as we go forward. So I hope that answers your question.
And I think it's also another good point that you brought up that this morning map is the map. That's your name.
It's it's a one syllable MA word.
That changing the map is also going to require us to actually try World Conquest first, so we can get information on what is not going to work, right? If we just went off and, like, revamped all 6 maps and held it really close to our chest for like 3 months and then come back, we might end up with a really terrible result.
Exactly. I definitely think, like, how players are going to play the game is because we built these 8 maps, 10 maps if you count those skirmish maps, based on how we know people play the game. However, that's totally different. So we need to kind of go through a little bit of the same process again.
Some guesses on how they're gonna fit together, and we always kept that in mind, right?
Of course,
to try to balance it for the whole world, but certainly a lot of things have changed there. Yeah.
Someone, I think it was I saw Bear, I lost it now, asked also, why can't it be the East 6? These 6.
Yeah.
And that's a really good question too, and Lamarck will explain.
Yeah, so I think for now, at least, the reason why we're doing it this way is because with the One World concept, we do have plans on how their home regions are going to be interacting with the coastal regions and with the port bases. So this is a little bit of a limitation that we have right now, so that's the reason. And
also, I think a lot of World Conquest has been designed coast to coast on purpose for a number of reasons, but also just because we think it's an interesting way to build it.
Yeah.
But
the idea of expanding the world in the future, I know, is really exciting to us all. And
there's so many different options.
Especially for you and I, Matt, we've just totally, like, gone on these strange, like, tangents during, like, meetings for like half an hour about how cool it will be to expand this part of the world into such a way, off in some far future version of Foxhole. And then we'd be like, what the hell are we talking about? Like, we spent 30 minutes on this. Let's go back to the main point of the meeting.
I mean, like, I'd also really like to see what's in the south, because I feel like it'd be really different, like in the deserty areas and the more, like,
There's desert? Spoiler alert.
There's deserts in the,
Stop spoiling
in the
everything.
map. Deserts are not confirmed. I just want to.
Desert's confirmed. Maybe this should be the last question before you give more spoilers, man.
I'm just gonna give away all the spoilers. Big, everything we say comes with a grain of salt. Just like
No covering your ass now.
Big Statty asked, do you see customization of vehicles coming to the game in the future, like side skirt armor and camo and stuff like that?
I think that's something that's interesting. I think vehicles, both in the way they're built and how like potentially more features that we can add onto it is something that we definitely want to come back to it, because even the ammo types for the tanks is something that we never finished off, and it's sort of like an incomplete project there. And I think that like maybe that's something this summer or later this year we can explore more on. I think our first third of this year is pretty damn packed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's exciting, right? I think vehicles, there's a lot of stuff we can do with vehicles. And I think another thing that ties into the one world concept is, I think once wars are actually lasting long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a reason, I was talking about this on the stream last week, but it's like, then there's a reason for us to actually have more customization, more content, more variety. Because if everything's happening on the same day, there's only so much you can squish in there. Before it seems kind of like there's almost like too much, right? But once wars are lasting long, then we can do this really like exciting stuff with like, oh, maybe I can chip away at this thing. It's a mountain goal that like in a week from now I will be able to do this. I'll be able to make a more customized vehicle in a theoretical future feature, right? And then so the longer wars will open up a lot of doors for this kind of thing, and we've been waiting. Like we really want to do that stuff, right? Like, yeah.
And I think there's like back to the single player question earlier. I also think like once the game is at a certain scope where those types of things can happen, then you can also have entire groups of people assaulting bases, and you can have entire groups of people building machines of war, and you can have entire groups of people running like scouting, and those can be entire games on themselves. And that's like the goal. I think that's the hope, is that like there's this huge sandbox in order to that you can actually like play around in and wage war in.
Yep.
I'm gonna take one last question. I think it's a really important one. I think it's one that like has come up a couple times even here, and I think it's a good one. Aquilas asked, what's the design decision between that led to having tunnels late in the tech tree?
Right. Yeah. So it was there was a lot of thought that was put into that, and so one of the things that we want to do is really push into the significance of the towns, right? And we want to make sure that if you claim the town, the longer that you've claimed it and you've held it, then it's worth more, right? Whereas right now you can kind of like just plop down a town and then you get the full value like right away. Like you get a lot almost by just being there first, right? As opposed to working on it. And we want to build a lot of importance surrounding these towns, and that was one of the reasons. Another reason is that in the early mid game, we kind of want to reduce the amount of the actual like volume of those like defenses, right? And that's sort of like another reason, another motivation behind that. And but then we also wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, the player agency is there to build wherever you want. So once the late game opens up, we want people to do basically whatever they want, wherever they want, and that's kind of a couple of the reasons. There is more that would require like a much longer sit down for me to kind of walk through, and I hope I can like have more of a conversation with you guys in the future. But those were a couple of the reasons why we've like chosen to do it this way, right? But I think that's one of the areas too that there's room for experimentation. I don't think that's the end of the road with that one, for sure. It's probably it's the first shot, and we're gonna see what happens, right? And we're gonna hear your feedback, and then we're gonna make changes if necessary, right?
Fantastic. All right, guys, thank you so much for your questions. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out and listening to us ramble about Foxhole. I hope you guys enjoyed your time, and we're going to go work hard again. So I hope you guys have a good 2 weeks. We'll see you then.
Bye bye.